What is going on, my homies? Welcome to a little garage talk. We are going to talk about something a little bit controversial today. So for those of you who have delicate ears or are a little afraid to get triggered, probably want to turn this video off. But for those of you who are a little more into having a discussion and talking about some things that really apply to us as outdoorsmen, as anglers, as people who love the lakes, the natural resources that we access, you are going to want to watch this video. So I've been watching a bunch of videos on YouTube and they are all about hunter harassment. Guys getting hassled by landowners, they're following rules, yet the landowner will call the game warden, they'll call the cops, they'll call just about whoever to go and complain about somebody just trying to enjoy the outdoors. Now, are the people enjoying the outdoors always right? Probably not. But for the most part, if you're following the rules, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing outside to enjoy our natural resources, you, sir, are in the right. And one thing that I really wish I would have known about back in the day when I started fishing was hunter harassment and basically outdoor harassment recreation rules. Basically, they're laws that a lot of the states have to protect us as people who enjoy the outdoors, spend a lot of money enjoying the outdoors, spend money on licenses, fishing licenses, hunting licenses, etc., and do things to conserve that resource. They protect us from people who don't like what we do. And the sad fact is not everybody's on the same page with people who like to go fishing, who like to go hunting, and like to participate in all these activities. So I'm going to tell you a couple stories in this video about experiences I've had and how I really wish I would have known about these laws. But first we're going to start with, I have right here, because my memory is terrible, I printed off, I live in Alabama, so I printed off the Alabama hunter harassment law, just to kind of give you an idea of what these laws entail and how they're defined. So I'm going to read it to you real quick. So no person shall willfully and knowingly prevent, obstruct, impede, disturb, or interfere with, or attempt to prevent, obstruct, impede, disturb, or interfere with any person in legally hunting or fishing pursuant to the rules and regulations of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and the law of the state of Alabama. So that sounds like a lot of blah, blah, blah. But basically it says if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, following the rules, following the laws, you got a fishing license, you got a hunting license, you're not stepping on somebody's pier, you're not, causing all these problems. Basically, if you're acting with common sense and enjoying the outdoors, you're okay, you're good to go, and nobody can stop you from doing that. One thing before we get started with my stories, I want to hear your stories down below in the comments box. I want to hear about where you've been harassed and what actions or what you did. Maybe you said, I'll let this one slide, or maybe you took actions, maybe exercised your rights. Tell me about it down below. But one thing before we get started, and it's something where it's kind of a caveat. I think a lot of us have pretty good common sense, but when it comes down to it, somebody stealing your fishing spot is not hunter harassment. Now, it can escalate, I'm going to tell you a story about that, to hunter harassment or outdoor recreational harassment, but just your general kind of, that guy skipped me in the boat ramp line, that is not hunter harassment. We're talking about things that elevate to a little bit higher level. So the first story I'll tell you about, and to be honest with you, if I would have known about this law, I would have stood my ground a little bit more. But since spring is a ways off, but it's coming, especially down in Florida, and this situation happened in Florida, me and my little brother were fishing a dock. And there were bedding fish around the dock. And you know how it gets, where there's like one or two magic docks on a lake where like every single spawning fish goes straight there. And there were multiple 4-pounders, a bunch of bucks on beds. And of course, I have power poles. We're fishing in Florida. It's pretty shallow. I was basically power poled, I would say about 15 to 20 feet from a person's dock on a fairly residential lake, fairly clear water. Power pulled down, and basically we're trying to catch this 4-pounder. Me and my little brother, he was down for a little vacation trip down in Florida. So we're picking away, and just a little side note, it actually turned out better that this lady harassed us because we went and caught a 7-pounder straight across the lake. We just went and looked in other places. But if I ever go back there, I will not let her beat me up and harass me. But the trick is, what she said is she came out on her dock and she's like, hey, yeah, she was a Karen, dude. This is Karens before Karens were cool, right? She's like, hey, you can't fish near my dock. You can't fish near any of these docks. You have to be 100 feet away. That's exactly how she talked, too. And I'm like, I don't think that's the case, ma'am. I'm allowed to fish here. I'm not touching your dock. We were power pulled down off the dock. At no point did my boat touch her dock. We were close. Don't get me wrong, we were close. The big motor was not running. Not even the trolling motor was running since we were power pulled down. We were not like hanging on her dock. We were not catching baits on her dock. The fish was basically, it would be like a dock post, and it was about 5 foot to the right of the dock post. So we were kind of pitching just directly in line with that, pitching past the fish and dragging it back. And she came out and said that. And I said, I don't think that's the case, ma'am. And she said, that is the law. That is exactly what's happening. And I'm going to call the police unless you leave. And so I kind of like looked at my brother, and this lady was kind of snotty, kind of snobby. And, you know, I honestly did not know 100% if that was the case. Maybe this lake had special regulations. Later on, I was to find out that no, all these lakes are the same. It's not a private lake. It doesn't have different rules than the rest of the lakes out there. And so we actually went to another spot. However, if I would have known this, because Florida does have hunter harassment laws as well, I would have said, ma'am, that's fine. I'm not doing anything wrong. You know, you can make any calls that you need. But I would also been proactive. Number one, something that I was already doing and do all the time, I would turn my camera on. Literally, I want every single piece of this on tape. Because really, when it comes down to it, oftentimes we're fishing, we're hunting alone. It's your word against theirs. So the only thing better, or the only way to back yourself up, is to have a witness. And that witness can be another person, or it can be a camera, just like this one that I'm filming this video on. Oftentimes the people that instigate this, they don't know the law. They're starting it to try to push you away. This one was trying to scare me and my little brother. We're younger kids, you know. She thought she could come out, kind of bully us, harass us, give us a shoulder, and push us away. You call your local wildlife commission and you say, hey, this is so-and-so. I'm out on the lake. I have an individual who's telling me X, Y, and Z, like this lady, that I can't fish near her dock, and I don't think that's the case. Can you help me to clarify this? She's threatened to call the police. I'm being as polite as possible, but I just want to make sure and clarify what's going on. Common sense and politeness will get you 100 miles further than just becoming and acting like that Karen, acting like that person who's trying to harass you. But stand your ground. That's important. But I had another situation, fishing offshore brush piles, and it turned out, the after story that I actually found out is the gentleman, I guess I can call him that, who was harassing me, had actually been one of the original people to drop or sink a lot of those brush piles. So he felt like he kind of owned some of this, you know, that own the lake mentality that we've all run into. I know the offshore stuff really well. I've idled it, and I know every corner of every ditch, of every shopping cart, of every airboat, of every cinder block, of every little thing that's down there. So I got a lot of marks, right? And basically what happened is there's a large lake, there's brush piles out in the middle. I was idling a brush pile, went to fish another. There was a boat about 200 or 300 yards away. I fished that brush pile, went to another because there's another about 30 yards away from that brush pile. And all of a sudden, this gentleman started coming towards me. And I'm like, cool, you know, he must watch the videos. He's coming to say hi. Well, he never came over to me. He just came and sat about like 50, 60 yards away from me. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Wouldn't wave to me or anything. And I'm like, that's cool. You know, some people are like that. It is what it is. So I went and ran to my next spot. It's probably maybe a quarter mile, half mile away. I go run over there. This is back, I think, when I had the tracker boat, you know, still a young kid running around. And so I don't run that fast. Get over there. I set up. About 5 to 10 minutes later, this gentleman is 50 yards away from me again. And this time, he's literally driving a circle around me. And it's not one of those deals where he's like looking for my spot or anything like that. He's just driving a circle around, like an intimidation aspect. And I'm like, all right, this is getting a little bit uncomfortable. You know, I don't know exactly what I did or what's happening, but I'm going to continue about my business. Obviously, this guy doesn't want to interact. I'm just going to move forward. So I went and fished another 5 or 6 more spots. Every single time within 4 or 5 minutes, this gentleman would come over and literally drive circles around me. He would drive next to my boat and idle past. At one point, I'm like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, you don't mind me, boy. And I'm like, okay, this is gonna get a little hairy. I might have to get back to the boat ramp and set this straight. But at the same time, that's not the approach you want to take. Like in the end, having a direct confrontation with these people is not going to resolve anything. And oftentimes it's going to escalate and in a direction that you don't want it to escalate. And the reality is you reacting in a physical manner or something along those lines, you're the one who's wrong. So you always have to be kind of the bigger player, the smarter chess player, and just know that the law is behind us. I went to another spot. This lasted for approximately 2 or 3 hours. It really got uncomfortable. I was concerned that once I got back to the ramp, he was going to follow me in there. There was going to be some kind of face-to-face confrontation. Finally, I'm like, hey, dude, what's your problem? What did I do to you? Like, what's going on here? He's like, oh, you don't talk to me? I'm like, dude, talk to me. Like, what's happening? Why are you so aggressive? Like, there's nothing that I did here. And I'm just some stupid kid knowing a lot of spots. But he's like, well, you guys come over, you fish all my brush piles, you do all this. And so I started getting an idea of what was actually happening. He was offended that I knew where his stuff that he dropped. He felt kind of like an ownership to it. And finally, I started talking with him like, hey, man, I got you on video, first of all, so just keep that in mind as you move forward through this situation. So I had a little bit of leverage. And I'm like, dude, like, I'm not fishing your spots. I spent the time, put the work in to find all this stuff. And you're driving around me, spending all your day that you should be fishing, harassing me. Like, we got to find a solution. In the end, he kind of told me some stories about how he was harassed, how he had some issues and that. I did record the interaction, and it turned out to be he was a halfway decent guy, maybe had some issues, I guess you could say, but it was definitely a situation that could have escalated and went in the wrong direction very quickly because this dude was aggressive, especially at first, a little bit unstable, and I didn't do anything. Like, I was not responsible for his behavior. I was following the law, doing exactly what I should have been doing, and actually still catching some fish, ironically. But the point being, there's a lot of different dynamics to these hunter harassment, angler harassment situations. They all have their own sort of script, and they can all go wrong. Like, don't think that just because you're following the right steps that everything's going to turn all right. That's why you need to be proactive for yourself. Having your phone, everybody's got a phone now. A lot of you guys actually have GoPros. I go watch your YouTube channels, watch your videos. Make sure you're recording when you get into a situation where you think that this is escalating and it's becoming a problem. You always want to have that witness, especially if they're out there solo like we are when we're fishing. Record, communicate with your local game warden, wildlife commission, whatever you guys call it in your states. Call them. Like, they are there to help. They are there as an assistance, as a supplement, as a guide to your experience outdoors. And, just use some common sense. Be polite, ask a question, let them know what's going on, let them know ask them how you should interact, how you should approach the situation. You don't want to have to deal with a Karen, even though it's really, really good video. You don't want them to screw up your day of fishing. But don't be afraid to stand your ground and enjoy yourself and tell people that, hey, you can't do this to me. I'm fishing, I'm following the rules, I'm doing something that's totally legal, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it. Hit that like and subscribe button. I want to hear your stories down below because I'm sure you got some juicy ones. We'll see you back from the garage. Tight lines.